Hello, I'm Janice Ellig, CEO of the Ellig Group, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar series, where we bring together thought leaders to help us through these unprecedented times. And today I'm joined by two stewards of the human resources function who are putting the human factor back into corporate America. Interestingly, in 2008, the financial crisis was all about financial capital adequacy. And yes, we are facing an economic downturn during these unprecedented times, but it truly is about the human capital factor, people's well-being and safety, and HR is at the forefront as many companies scrambled to maintain business continuity. It's all about people and keeping our companies running and having to go virtually overnight. So I'm pleased to welcome two extraordinary business leaders of the HR function. Lisa Buckingham, EVP, Chief People, Place, and Brand Officer of Lincoln Financial Group, and Sean Woodruff, Senior EVP, Chief HR Internal Communication Officer at TIAA. I have known these two extraordinary leaders for over decades. And why I chose Lisa and Sean are for some very specific reasons to talk about the decisions they are making as we navigate COVID-19, this pandemic that has hit the world. Lisa and Sean are at the forefront of this pandemic. They're making decisions and balancing the people and profit decisions that must be made daily. And what is unique about them? They are committed, they are communicative, they are champions of what needs to get done, and they have great character. And that is integrity that has to happen when you don't know what's down the road, when you don't know what the timetables are going to be, when you don't know what the outcomes are going to be. And HR is a function that is not always at the table, is not always listened to, but these are two courageous leaders that have the ear of the CEO, that are at the table and have been very courageous during many market cycles. So Sean and Lisa, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. So Lisa, I'm going to start with you. How did you pivot so quickly to get your company, your people, virtual, almost overnight?
So you'll probably hear a lot of me repeat of what I'm going to say. So first, I also lead business resilience for Lincoln. And so that's business continuity, health and safety, crisis management. So that's a 24/7, 365 day a year effort. We watch different things. We watch bad weather, terrorism activities, hurricanes, anything that really, the calamities that we might not think would impact us, but do. And then we also have a ton of protocols around on the health side. We watch different viruses. So if you go back and think about SARS, H1N1, and Ebola, and now COVID-19. So readiness. It's not always a fun role when you're calling somebody and saying, I heard about a shooting at this mall, and you find out that you have employees there, so you have to execute on your plans. So readiness from that perspective. But the other piece, Janice, I would tell you is we implemented a digital program about 5 years ago, and we took the hypothesis of what digitization should we be looking at in our capabilities in our organization to streamline our work processes and really empower our employees to be working on more strategic things. So digital was game-changing for us. So that, what I would tell you, we worked on that. At Lincoln, we began thinking about this, Janice, in January. We're a domestic workforce, but we have a lot of people who travel to Asia and other continents, and we were watching. So early days in January, we implemented the self-isolation when you returned from Asia, and we started communicating early. We started ordering hand sanitizers for desks and wipes and things like that, really very, very early. The other thing, and I'll finish with this, we completed deep dives with every one of our business unit leaders, the presidents, our functional EVPs, and their business resilience leaders to just dig deep into scenario planning, what ifs, and all of that. So we felt very, very good. Most importantly, with our digital transformation, we also were doing a lot of remote working already. So the readiness from equipment provisions, laptops, headsets, things like that, we were very ahead of that. I mentioned the digitization. I think that was really game changing when we made the recommendation to the CEO and the senior management committee. So super proud of the partnership with HR, technology, senior leaders, and communications. Communications is a huge piece here. So we had to write a lot of new policies and things like that very, very quickly and on the fly. But as you mentioned, it was a turnkey night. We made a decision at 11 o'clock at night, and the next day we were moving completely 99% work from home.
Sean, at your company, what was happening?
Sure.
How did you respond?
Well, with respect to TIAA, we operate in about 20 countries, and outside of the US, we have a presence through our Naveen asset management organization, and we also have a presence, obviously, in Hong Kong. So we were probably more sensitized to the novel coronavirus than others, just as a consequence of having had that experience. Secondly, the weekend of March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, there were two things that occurred in the US that were both pivotal and had a direct impact on TIAA. One is the first fatality in Washington State, Kirkland, Washington, which is the outbreak that emanated from the nursing home. We have a presence in Washington State. We made a decision that weekend that we would close our offices in Washington State and request that our associates work remotely. Secondly, in New York City, there was the second patient that tested positive was announced, and there was a connection between that patient and one of our associates at one of our locations in New York City. So very quickly, as Lisa pointed out, we had to close that location, ask employees to work remotely. Then the following week, things began to intensify in the New York City area. And on March the 13th, which coincidentally, I know, Lisa, is the same date at which Lincoln Financial Group made its decision, we made a decision that we would be remote on March 16th. And because of the yeoman's effort of the client services and IT organization globally, we went from a company that is typically anywhere from the 90% working at an office location to being about 85–90% working virtual by Monday, which was an enormous undertaking. And I can't, again, stress enough admiration, adoration, and kudos to the IT organization and our facilities organization that made that happen. Of our 17,500 employees, we have less than 200 associates across the globe that are working in a physical location because of the nature of the job. So for all practical purposes, we're pretty much virtual at this point.
Amazing. And businesses still working, things are moving, business is coming in, right? So it's not.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I don't want to leave the impression that, and I've seen this written and I've heard some say that things are working perfectly. I think it would be disingenuous to suggest, at least from our perspective, that it is perfect to operate a virtual company. I think it's better to say that under the circumstances and given the alternatives, we are absolutely embracing it and making the best of it. But for those of us that are parents and now find ourselves homeschooling, find ourselves entertaining, dependent based on the age of one's kids. In some cases, people have to take care of their parents, elderly care. It's not easy and it's difficult for those that live by themselves. There's a degree of loneliness, so one has to be careful and attentive to ensuring that our colleagues are mentally healthy as well. So it's not ideal, but juxtaposed to the alternative, we're all making the best of it.
So let's get to that. So there've been many an outreach in terms of helping people with benefits and mental health benefits and things that companies have done, magnanimous outreach in terms of leadership. I know your two leaders, your two CEOs are phenomenal in terms of Roger Ferguson and Dennis Glass, really outstanding leaders in their own right. And now they've stepped up to the plate and you have with them. What have you done in terms of extension of benefits and outreach to your employees?
Lisa, I'm happy to follow you, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So what I would say, Janice, for a long time, we've been building different benefits that really are getting to the heart of our, we have demographical differences, geographical differences, and we've been modernizing our benefits for quite some time. And wow, couldn't have been more perfect timing if you think about it, from the investments for health and safety and productivity, if you want to go back on the digital piece. So, the telemedicine, I think, was absolutely game changing. We took it a step further and waived copays to really encourage people to do that. Creating, a lot of easier access and having real conversations with our employees on, we're doing a lot of video just from our iPhones and posting it on our mobile portal, which is called One, and reminding people around the mindfulness and the mental wellness, financial wellness. So we have a ton of products out there, but we're reinforcing those messages. I just came off of a benefits town hall of about 3,000 employees right before this. And, the questions are around their PTO. It's around how can they, homeschool with the right tools or not the right tools, depending upon where people are. So we've provided parental and guidance. We've provided guidance for children for successful online learning. So from that perspective, the telemedicine, mindfulness, our employee assistance program, we have, high usage right now. Maybe people just need to speak with somebody, and we're encouraging people to take that time during their workday, because people don't realize, I think everybody went into this going, I have to prove I can do this from working from home. And Sean said it so beautifully that not everything's perfect. Sure, we're closing sales. Yes, we're supporting our clients and our policyholders. Yes, we have pipelines. We have all of that. But the reality is, sometimes people are just saying, I don't know, when I wake up, I just go to work and I don't have lunch. And so we're taking, and it's not soft. These are not soft messages. We're telling people, your time, go enjoy. You don't have a commute today. Make sure you're using that time for you, for yoga, for meditation, for spending time with your family, or working with your children on school. So many of those things, so there's that increased focus on you and your productivity. The other things, we just reinforce emergency medical leave, because some people just said, I can't do my job without childcare. I have 2 people working in the house, and we have only 1 bedroom where we're sharing a bedroom as our office. So we've created a lot of flex working that, quite frankly, everything about COVID-19, there's so many terrible things, but I hope we're all bringing the silver linings that we have been forced to think differently, decide quicker, create noise out of the system, and make sure that we're giving the tools to our employees and by the way, our clients to be more productive in safer ways. And so I'm really, really proud of that. The other things that I would just tell you from the employees, we very, very quickly created in our HR services center a portal, but live people. So if somebody is COVID positive, that they have somebody to speak with. And I know Sean, he educated me on a few really cool things that you're doing as well. And I hope that you'll add to this at the end. But so we've been able, so we know if somebody's positive, then we take the next level, and it's very white glove from the standpoint of how we respond. But I learned something really cool from Sean about what they do. So Sean, maybe I can ask you to say what
Sure.
you're doing.
Absolutely, and compliments to you, Lisa and Lincoln. I mean, you're doing a lot of the things that you're doing are definitely cutting edge. There are two things I'd like to highlight, as Lisa referenced. One is we established call it, if you will, a human manual contact tracing system of sorts. So we monitor every single TIAA associate globally that makes us aware that he or she has either tested positive or they had prolonged contact with someone that's tested positive for COVID-19. We monitor that person. We contact or reach out to them on a daily basis. In some cases, we have provided meal services for the family. In other cases, we've provided deep cleaning. In other cases, and especially if one lives in an urban area, as Lisa pointed out, in an apartment where it is difficult or virtually impossible for one to be quarantined in an effective manner, we have offered and in some cases provided hotel lodging for the family while the associate or patient is safely quarantined in his or her home. The second thing I'd like to point out, which is pretty neat, this was recommended to us by an associate. As you are aware, for any of you that has a graduating high school senior or graduating college senior, there are no graduations by virtue of the shelter-in-place regime across the country. We are hosting next week a virtual graduation ceremony. Our CEO, Roger Ferguson, who himself does several commencement speeches a year, is actually will be doing a commencement speech. We have arranged for photos. Each of the graduates' name will be mentioned, and we have 500 graduates that and photos that were brought to our attention, and we're going to have a virtual TIAA graduation ceremony next week. And
Amazing!
we're pleased with that.
That is great.
That's awesome.
That's special. That's giving back. Yeah, I'm going to say also, if there are any questions from our audience, we're taking them. And one comes from Jennifer and Lisa. Sean is a special person. Well, we know this.
Oh.
Yes.
You are.
And put the check in the mail. You can PayPal me.
I can say some other things about Sean, having known him all these years, but I won't. This is great. That is really great. You know, on a prior webinar with a strategic partner, Cultural Intel, we talked about Lily Gilvalletta had harvested 100 million discussions where the economic impact was very, and this was March of this year, was very strong, but 70% or 70 million of those discussions were about the social, psychological, behavioral impact on people, particularly the millennials, but also on boomers as well, and the feeling of isolation. What are you doing, and you've mentioned some of it, but anything else you're doing to keep people engaged, feeling really that sense of having an impact on the company still and being inclusive?
Well, I think we start from a place of every associate, we refer to our employees as associates. Every associate deserves an exceptional people leader. So we place a lot of emphasis on leaders ensuring that you are in regular and ongoing contact with your colleagues. This really demands, Janice and Lisa, that a leader should be spending as much as 30 to 40 to 50% of his or her daily time just on communication.
Absolutely.
And we have to find ways of substituting what works so effectively in an in-person environment virtually. As an example, when we're working in an office on an impromptu basis, we would get up and cross the hall or go to someone's office or someone's cubicle, someone's desk, and have a conversation. Mm-hmm. How do you replicate that virtually? And that's by calling people on an unplanned, unscheduled basis and calling them for no other reason other than to say, how are you doing? Is there anything with which I may help? How are things going today? How is your family doing? So I think, Janice, that a lot of it has to be focused on making sure that we are attentive to the entire associate experience and not just the work experience. Lisa?
Yeah, so okay, what I would say, and I did see another question around this a little bit deeper, but let me answer what Janice has asked. But from the early days, we pulled in our employee communications and our external communicators, and we said, we really need to build a framework to make sure that we have consistent messaging from anybody that's speaking to our workforce, number one. And number two, anybody that's speaking outside, those messages have to be aligned and be true. So early days, we created a communications framework. We also put in the fun framework in the communication side. So what we said was, let's bolster our one portal. So that's our intranet. And also we have a mobile app for One2Go. And not every single employee has a cell phone, but what we wanted to do was encourage people, give us pictures of your work from home situation, give us pictures of your puppies or your children, anything around the play areas, their work areas. We just, we had somebody today, he was doing his presentation for Benefits Town Hall in a playroom. So there were doll houses in the back, and it just, everything
but Lisa, let us see your dog. You're with your golden lab right now.
Come here. She's old, so it takes her a second. Maggie, come here.
I knew you two would take over, so it's okay.
Wonderful.
She's my bestie. I have had her 9 years. She will not leave my side. She's going to have to come to work with me. But we've just amped up every communications. We remind people there's an off button. We remind people we are in empathetic jobs. Think about our customer service reps who are calling, getting a phone call for a life policy. They have to be in a good place when they're talking to somebody who's in a devastated position. Think about in Sean or my businesses of our 401ks, there's hardship withdrawals coming in. People are in desperation right now. So we're focusing on that, reminders and all of that. We're reminding people, drink water. We're reminding people, exercise, go for a walk. Don't say yes to every single meeting. You know where you need to be. And I've always used that language. We've always been a survey company because I love to hear what people say, whether it's good or bad, because I think that we have to learn from both sides of that. But we do Feedback Fridays now, and they're literally 3 quick questions every Friday. It started with, how was your first week at work from home? And some people said that they needed longer cables or better headset, we basically said, and very similar to Sean, when we said you're going to work from home, we said take anything you need to be productive unless you have to unscrew it. That's where we were. So if people didn't have laptops, they were going to get them that week. And thankfully the preparedness was really there. In those Feedback Fridays, people have said a lot about ergonomics. So we just did this, examples. It felt like an advertisement for QVC. We were showing people how to create a stand-up desk without ordering one. Do we have to order one? If we need to accommodate, we'll order one. Chairs, things like that. We just keep really reinforcing that. Huge engagement with the personal videos from all of our leaders. People want to hear the real thing, and they want to hear, it's not going that well for me today, right? Because it's real. You can't be shiny happy every single moment. I'm surprised my son hasn't walked in here to print something that's really loud on my 10-year-old printer. So it's very, very interesting. And Janice, the last thing I would just say is employees have said more than once, they love seeing their leaders where they live. They love seeing them in their environment. There's something really social there, which I think that we need to build on. And the last thing, and I've always used this language about keeping human and human resources, we've all been as humanized as possible. You're going into a grocery store, if you go, people are scared. They're scared. So my job is to give as much comfort and communication and ideation and ideas, just to let everybody know we're in this together. And from a leadership perspective, this is it. We're all on the same level.
I said I selected the two of you. One, I've known you this long, but you're the most authentic, courageous, highly communicative. And so one of the questions here is, so what have the discussions been that you've had with the board regarding COVID-19 and what you had to do? Because you've had to be pretty direct with them in terms of where we're going. And here you have the people profit margin. You got to make this company profitable, but you got to think about the people too. So what have been those discussions? So this is a question from the audience. How do you handle that?
Sean, do you want to go first?
Sure. Our board is highly engaged, Janice, and our board actually now meets on a weekly basis every Friday, and that meeting begins with our CEO providing an update and a status, and that update impressively begins around people. All right, a status, how are our people, how well are we collaborating, how is it working, what challenges do we have, what opportunities are we exploiting. So we're privileged as a company to have a board who not only believes in the values of TIA, but lives those values in their stewardship of the company.
Any pushback?
Anyway?
Pushback? No.
Encouragement. They're quite the opposite.
Yeah, right.
Janice, huge connectivity and engagement with our board. Early days, even before there was anything happening in Washington State and California, we had our board meeting and we had our comp committee meeting, and we can get into executive comp some other day, but we had a meeting. And at that board meeting, I had given an update of what we were doing from a COVID-19 response and how we were watching it. And I really do think that was very, very helpful for them to see that we were in front of it, and that helped us talk more about the digitization. And, they've been fantastic and highly connected. We communicate all the time. And guess what? They check in with us. How are you doing?
You're two strong leaders, and we're going to get to that in terms of the leadership of HR and how others can make a stronger leadership role for all on the board level. But here's another question from a friend of ours, Mike Wright. As a former SHRO of a publicly traded company, I found myself also wearing the hat of Chief Communications Officer at times. How are you balancing the message of the company, public health officials, and the media to ensure employees remain engaged and ultimately feel safe to return to an office environment once the science and government allows such action?
Well, there is right now, Janice, there is dissonance between what scientists are saying and what some governments are saying. The position that we've taken at TIA is the following. While we recognize being 100% virtual has its challenges, to the point that was made earlier, we successfully supporting our clients, processing our business, and we have had, impressively, we've had a high degree of engagement as demonstrated in a survey that we conducted 2 weeks ago company-wide. We feel that we've said that we will begin exploring the possibility of coming back not before August the 15th. So as you think, right, that's the date at which we will explore. We'll examine where we are now, look at the epidemiological status of the disease. In some parts of the country or world, it's still sort of apexing. In other parts of the world, it's going on the other side. And we feel that we have a duty to ensure that our associates, their health and their welfare is what matters most to us. So the notion of coming back in prematurely, perhaps having to wear a mask, having to close our cafeteria, perhaps having to check the temperature, restricting the use of certain facilities in the building. And if something were to happen, if there were another outbreak, and then having to ask people to go back working remotely, our view is that that might be more disruptive than just being patient and prudently examining the landscape and making a decision that's in the best interest of our associates.
Yeah. Janice, we couldn't agree with Sean more. We're doing many of the same things. And what I would tell you, in early April, we made a decision that July 15th would be the earliest date. Now, if the curve's not flattened, yeah, there's a lot of interdependencies to that decision. But what we wanted to do was first, in our strategies, it's, we had 3 for COVID-19: protect our employees and their wellness, number 1. Number 2, protect and run our business for our policyholders and clients. And 3, do good things for America and the world. And so what we felt, putting out a date that, again, could move depending upon where all of this goes, we wanted to give our employees who have childcare issues, school ends in the next couple of weeks, in June, and then they can figure out what they can do. We're trying to provide as many options, but they're very hard right now until things improve and things lighten up. We have chief medical officers in the company. We're using outside experts as well. Sometimes Sean talked about the science of it, but you get reality checks when you have an employee. What we don't want is to go back and have an employee test positive, and then you revert back to the deep cleanings in the buildings, 14 days self-isolation. So we really want to do it in a cadence that works for the organization. Our service levels, our productivity have been very, very positive and strong. But there are people, Janice and Sean, when we announced July 15th, they were mad. They're like, I need to get back to work. And there's social and societal issues in there. There's some people who aren't safe at home, and their safe places work.
That's
so
right.
All of these things are, this is coming from the heart of Lisa. I tell you, this is what I lose sleep about. It's the health and safety. And some people just have that need. Maybe that's where they were getting their food every day. So we have a lot of special things going on in the organization, and people are just rising up to help our employees as well.
And some want to come back. They just don't want to be in a crowded workplace. So you have to accommodate that as well. Do you think that this is going to be the virtual, when it is safe and science and government, everybody says it's okay to go back, that it's going to be a time when some are going to be more virtual, though? Some it's going to be.
I think it has to be nationwide. recently announced that they will have employees in in an office in 4 or 5 principal locations, and in any other office, those employees will work remotely. Fidelity announced 2 weeks ago that they think that they will likely remain in a heavily virtual environment, and this is on a not just a post-quarantine, but on a post-immunization basis. Google yesterday announced that they told employees expect to continue to work virtually for the rest of the year. And I think, Janice and Lisa, and it's hard for us now to imagine getting back on a post-immunization basis, but even after immunization, this has to change for a very long time in terms of how we work, in terms of people perhaps being concerned about being on a subway train or being in a bus. This will have a lasting effect on how we lead our lives for a very long time to come.
Absolutely.
And will that give you greater access to talent? And more even now, like, so 40% of companies, have not downsized, but changed their business proposition, and 31% have let go of talent. And so is there greater access to talent? And because talent can work virtually, will you look for great talent during the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
Lisa?
Yeah, okay, so make no mistake. This is the hugest talent marketplace right now because there's a few things. There have been furloughs, there have been layoffs by many, many companies. We've been very lucky that that's not where we are. We are recruiting. Employees have long memories about how they were treated, number one. I think that huge corporate reset button got hit, and now people are seeing that virtual can work. Will there be a blend? Yes. Trust me, the market's out there. We're recruiting. We pivoted to virtual recruiting and onboarding in 72 hours after our decision. I think roles will change. What's the job? How do you do it? I think more people are investing in digital that may not have been ahead of that curve. So you're creating co-relationships for your employees with the digitization, which is kind of cool. So there's exceptional candidates out there. I think that people have to get their heads around, if you can't meet them, a philosophical question, if you can't meet them in person, can you hire effectively online, virtually? And what are the assessments? How do the background checks work? All of that. We're not having a problem recruiting, Janice. I think this is a huge reset button. And think about it. If other companies' mindsets change, maybe you don't have to keep moving people from California to go work in New York or New York to Boston. And there's a huge cost saved to that. Maybe people will travel differently and build teams in different ways. This is such a greenfield opportunity from a marketplace.
Sean, are you seeing this as well?
Oh, absolutely. And the best talent, there's always mobility and career opportunities for great talent. It doesn't matter what the environment. So I think that it makes sense for companies to always be on the lookout for key talent and opportunistic hiring opportunities. Having said that, we know now that we're in an environment, it was reported, yes, another 2.3 million filed for unemployment yesterday. So we're now hovering at about a $32-33 million mark. So that's obviously going to have an impact on the employment market. But there are some roles, if you're in a digital role, if you're in cyber, interestingly, if you're on the call center side, there are a number of roles that are still in hot demand.
Are you also seeing, though, that some leaders have really risen to the occasion, right? And
Absolutely.
and some just don't quite get it, right? Or they just have not been the leaders you expect. And you can see that in terms of the people leadership side, even in the HR function, I'm singling you out because I've known you, but it's sort of like, this is a time across America, you read it in the papers, some took the payroll protection when they didn't need it. And so it's really about leadership, right? Isn't it? It's totally about, like, Rogers getting out there and, giving the commencement speech. I mean, leadership is really being defined more than ever before, isn't it?
Right. And you see the best of leadership in times of crisis. One of my favorite quotes it's by Martin Luther King, said that the character of man is not best judged in times of comfort and convenience, but times of challenge and controversy. So when we're in a crisis mode, and you see the best of leadership this time, and it's a great thing to witness.
Yeah, I would say, Janice, that this is where true leaders are going to shine and differentiate in anything that they're doing. And for leaders that aren't, this will be a reset for them to either learn, or maybe this isn't the thing for them. Because, I learned a lot from Keith Ferrazzi many, many years ago on caring candor. And you can have that on a Zoom or on a WebEx or Microsoft Teams. We have to just work differently, and that doesn't mean that our management skills that we had before are gone. It's just, what are you building into that toolkit to be even better? And that's what I think is a really cool opportunity for people.
So going forward, thinking post-COVID-19, how are you preparing with your teams about being more innovative and thinking, like, what's around the corner? How do we prepare for tomorrow? Is there advice to the audience out there of what they need to think about more? I mean, it's like, we don't know the timetable here. We don't know what's going to happen, but what do you, I know, Lisa, you wake up at 5:30 in the morning thinking about this. I don't quite wake up at that time, but I think about these things. My team pushes me. Our tagline is, reimagining search. When we launched our firm, again in 2017, I'm the last standing partner. I didn't know what that meant quite then, but I do now. It truly is reimagining. What are you going to, all of us, what are we going to be doing for our clients, for ourselves in remote? What do you think about? What's for our audience today? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think if people haven't already started really looking at innovation, I mean, we already had an innovation and a consumer insight group before, but this is now, we've had learnings and we're seeing patterns. So if we're not taking those opportunities and testing and learning more, and then doing focus groups, and they can be done in beautiful settings like this, we're already pushing the envelope up. Are there new products? What should we be doing? Is there a different, I mean, we pivoted to a virtual selling strategy very nicely. Not every salesperson wants to stay virtual. Of course, they want to get back out there and have the relationships. But our job is to keep them healthy and safe, and our clients and policyholders. So from my perspective, Janice and Sean, innovation better darn well be embedded in everything you're thinking about every day.
And Janice, I as critical as innovation is obviously to any business, from the lens of an HR practitioner, we have been laser focused on making sure that we are both creating, engendering, and sustaining the best associate or employee experience. Because employee experience is what drives engagement, and engagement drives business results. And in an environment where you're working virtually, you have to sort of quickly pivot, because the things that might work from an employee experience perspective, working in an in-office scenario might be very different in working remotely. So what we're trying to do right now is to do a reset, a recalibration, if you will, and to make sure that we are focusing on the associate experience. How are we creating mobility opportunities? What are we doing in this new world where mental health and mental wellness is so critical. What sort of benefits are we providing? How are we helping leaders lead in a virtual role? All of that is tied to the associate experience.
And since I have a very diverse panel here, and since you read in the paper about the leaders who are leading countries, 7 women leaders who have led the countries through COVID-19 quite effectively, and I look at your companies that have very diverse boards, I think there's really a statement here about a composition at all levels in companies for greater innovation, to have more diverse workforce and make that workforce much more inclusive. And as you're saying, that employee experience, which drives innovation. And of course, that's what we're all about. But that's what you two are really doing, is for that employee experience, because those female leaders and more diverse workforce really do care. They're more compassionate, and they really do want more inclusivity. And you, as two stewards of the people in the company, communicate that in such an authentic way. So I want to thank you both.
Thank you
For your insights today, and really driving that at both of your outstanding companies. So Lisa and Sean, thank you for knowing you all.
Thank you.
And driving,
awesome.
driving great results at your company. So thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for your friendship.
All right.
Thank you. Everybody. Stay healthy.
Stay healthy and well.
Stay healthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Bye.